Welcome to Inside Eastern Utah. I'm Shannon Hughley. We are here with Scotty Draper and two gentlemen from the Carbon County Commission. And today we have invited them to come on and talk about a resolution that was passed in this last commission meeting on the 20th. And that resolution was for Carbon County to withdraw from the Southeastern Utah District Health Department. So lots of questions surrounding that. I think this has probably been in the works for you guys for a lot longer than it's been in the community. I think some people in the community after the meeting were like, what? They kind of perked up their ears. What's happening? So if you guys could help the community understand kind of why you came to that decision, what was behind it, and then what it will look like going forward. I know in the meeting, Christian Briner, when he read the resolution, said, now, just to be clear, we are going to continue to try to work things out, and maybe we can rescind this resolution before December 31st. If we cannot work anything out, then we've given the proper 90-day notice, and we will withdraw from the health department. So,
you know, Shannon, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you were quoting Christian there, just mentioning that more than anything else, you could call it even a bookkeeping item. There's a proper procedure we have to go through in case of the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, we stay as a tri-county health department, and that we can actually function going forward with a proactive board with good partners from each county.
great.
Now, how did this even come about? Why did the discussion start to pull out from the health department?
You know, there were a number of things that really led into that. Everybody wants to pin it on a failed hiring procedure that the board went through. But that was kind of the final straw, and Commissioner Meller has been serving on the board since he was elected. And so he has a lot more information than that, but that is not the reason right up front. That's
Good.
one of many.
Okay, kind of well, I don't even know if it was the straw that broke the camel's back, but the board, let's make that clear. 3 people from each community is on the board, 1 elected official from each county. I should say county, not community. So it's a 9-person board, 3 from each county.
That is correct, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think
you're
that's
fine.
important for people to understand that each county is represented equally on that board.
And they're elected based on county procedures and you know, ordinances and so forth that we have to abide by also. But they're 3-year terms and on a rotating basis, so that not everybody expires their term on the same time.
You were both pretty vocal in the meeting about the dysfunction of the board. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure,
You know,
I'd
and,
be glad to.
Okay.
So let me explain the past year. All right, so a board typically, like this board, is an advisory board. And our only employee that we are technically over is the director or the interim director.
And you said in the meeting, I think this board has forgotten that they're an advisory board.
And a policy board.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they've gone way beyond what that role really is defined by state statute. And then there's rules that pertain to that state statute, and then even their own bylaws.
Which you quoted in the commission meeting.
Correct.
So go ahead, Jake, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not a problem. But, you know, over the past year, we've gone from what we were supposed to do as an advisory board to reviewing the vouchers of all the expenses, which is not our job, that's the finance person's job, to micromanaging various departments of within the health department that are below the director, to actually having members of the board individually, without being sanctioned by the board at large, walking over to the Board of Health and interviewing employees, which is beyond the scope of anything that we're really supposed to do. There's a high level of dysfunction in regards to what the board has been doing during our every other month meetings that has not had any regard to public health, which is what we're supposed to do.
Right.
In fact, this past meeting just yesterday, we passed a motion to table 6 items, 4-3 we passed it, so that we could actually, for the first time in the past year, discuss public health and hear from the departmental reports that we're supposed to hear from every meeting.
And I think that that's critical to point out that that's what needs to happen, because if you're going to advise and be a policy-making board for a health department, you really need to hear those reports. You really need to hear from those people that have the boots on the ground, and to not only prevent, but to cure, issues that may exist within the communities. And each of the communities are well represented, not only on the board because everybody has 3, but every county also has employees within their counties that, again, have a day-to-day interaction with what's going on with public health in those communities. And we need to hear from them.
Absolutely.
The management side of it needs to happen on the health district side. That's why there is an administrator, a director, a health officer, and then all the staff that pertain to that. So,
Shannon, you mentioned that the headlines in the newspaper were a shock to some folks. To others, specifically several of the employees of the health department, I received thanks that we're actually coming to bat for them, that we're trying to fix the dysfunction of the board, and that we're trying to make a difference. And we have to go to perhaps the extreme lengths of putting a 90-day notice out there, that if we can't, after the past year of dysfunction, fix it, then perhaps there is a change, a drastic change that could occur.
Sure.
Now with this, if you guys do end up pulling from the health department, you obviously contribute to them every year as part of their funding, which is then in turn matched by state and federal funding. So $126,000 a year is what the county gives in. What would that mean if you guys pull out for the health department as it exists now without that funding?
Let me add to that situation just really fast. Carbon County has passed a resolution. We've given the 90-day notice. By the time this airs, Emery County will have also passed a similar resolution. Again, as a bookkeeping item in case of the worst case scenario, and we have to do something different. Of which I would foresee, worst case scenario, the 2 counties forming their own health department. And life for our local people, the local health department employees, continuing as it always has.
because it does have to be reformed. And that process, a good example of the last one that pulled out from this health district was San Juan County. And so new, not arrangements, but contracts have to be taken care of with the state. We can tell you the state's not keen on breaking up health districts. These have been in existence for 40 years, especially combining the rural counties in a way that allow them to not have as much overhead. And so, they would like to see it function that way. But in that case, new health districts would be formed, and those contracts would be reissued based on population and other items that go into those contract negotiations. So our money would go still into a health department that would more than likely be combined with Emery County.
So members of the community could still expect the same services they've grown accustomed to.
Absolutely.
Employees that are currently at the health department can expect to hopefully continue on just through kind of a new system that you guys would have to establish if you did withdraw.
The biggest change would simply just be to the board.
Which then, in your guys' vision, would hopefully be a more sound board and be able to make better decisions for those in the community.
Whether we do it with 2 counties or with 3, that's what we're looking for.
And I think it was you in the meeting, Jay, mentioned that Carbon County has 50% of the population.
We do.
So it makes sense that the health district would be ran from Carbon County, and that Grand County doesn't like that. And Grand County is only about 22 or 23% of the
Roughly,
population,
yes.
and then Emery County is 25%.
25 plus.
And honestly, I can see a big difference in just day-to-day life in Castle Country, Carbon and Emery County, and then Moab, and so maybe there's a conflict there. But you said you felt like it was, shoot, I took notes, I'm sorry, that there's just a difference in how the counties perceive public health in Moab and then in Carbon County, because you can probably only speak for Carbon County. I know you've been in meetings with Emery County, but let's just speak in the difference between Carbon County and Grand County in what you feel like that difference in perception to public health is.
I think that the prejudice is not so much in regards to public health, because we are really tasked with those services that provide the very basic health needs of sometimes our underprivileged or the poorest of the poor. But even those who are not can go there for immunizations. I mean, that's where I get my immunizations every year. And so, you know, they serve the whole range, but I don't know that there's any difference in concern for public health between the counties. I really think it's really more of a matter of perhaps attitude or prejudice for us. I've seen that distributed or displayed in a couple of things. One, in meetings where they have talked about that they really don't like the idea that it is housed here. And I think that, and again, I'm putting words into somebody's mouth, but they would love to control the world. And they would love to have everything in there at their fingertips. So I think that's one of those items. So no harm is meant, but prejudice is given because of where we're located. Dealt with them on other issues. Let's face it, for the most part, they do not like mineral extraction. These two counties, Carbon and Emery, are mineral extraction counties and have been. So was Grand at one point in time, but somewhere they've lost their roots along that way. So we have those same concern for the human element, but we keep seeing that play out. Statements like that of, don't like that that's where the headquarters are. Statements of that we want new blood. I mean, is that not prejudice, or is that not even discriminatory?
To go into a job interview with that in
mind. So basically the sign comes out that says, you know, if you are from these three counties, need not apply. So.
And it was evident in the 3 times we went out for applicants, all 3 times we had valid candidates. And all 3 times they decided not to hire.
How can they do that with, they're only a third of the board. 2/3 of the board is not with them. So how can they make that decision?
Well, and you have to remember that as commissioners, we don't control how they vote. I mean, we have one voice on there, and so that is left up to however that might happen. But a lot of times those votes were happening when there was less than a full 9-member board in place. Emergency meetings, those kind of things that are called with a 3-day notice according to law, can catch any one of us out of town, and they just, you know, would move forward anyway, which we understand in the nature of doing business. But to go down the roads that we have between the prejudice that I personally feel, you don't have to spend a lot of time with the Grand County board members to know exactly where they're coming from or what the agenda is.
Well, that provides some insight. We're going to touch on it a bit more after our break and speak about some of the other things that are happening in the county. Obviously, busy times for you guys, a lot going on. So stay tuned. We're going to be back in just a few minutes with more from Inside Eastern Utah.